For weeks, I kept telling myself I was overthinking everything. Emma answered my messages later than usual. Ryan always claimed he was busy whenever I invited him over. Every excuse sounded believable by itself, but together they left a heavy feeling inside my chest. I called Emma that afternoon. "Are we still meeting at 7?" I asked. "Of course," she replied. "Don't be late this time." I laughed softly. "It's our 6th anniversary. I'd never miss it." "Good," she said. "I'll see you there." She hung up before I could say I loved her. I stared at my phone. "That's strange," I whispered. Normally, she always waited to hear those words. Still, I convinced myself everything was fine. I even bought her favorite flowers on the way to the restaurant. The rain had not started yet, and the evening felt unusually quiet. I arrived almost 20 minutes early. "Perfect," I said to myself. "Maybe I can surprise her." The hostess smiled. "Table for Emma Brooks?" "Yes, right this way." I followed her toward the private corner we had reserved. Then I stopped walking. My body froze before my mind understood why. Emma was already there. She was smiling. Ryan sat beside her instead of across from her. Their hands were locked together on the table. She leaned toward him and laughed at something he whispered. The flowers slipped from my fingers and landed on the floor. Ryan looked up first. His smile disappeared. "Ethan." Emma turned around. The color drained from her face. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. I finally forced myself to breathe. "I guess I'm early," I said quietly. Ryan stood. "Listen, this isn't what it looks like." I looked at their hands. "It looks exactly like what it is." He pulled his hand away from hers. "It just happened." I let out a tired laugh. People don't accidentally fall in love while holding hands. Emma slowly stood. "I'm sorry." Those 2 words hurt more than anything else. I searched her face, hoping she would tell me this was some terrible joke. Instead, she lowered her eyes. "When?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "A few months ago." "A few months?" She nodded. "So every smile, every promise, every kiss." "I never wanted to hurt you." I interrupted her. "But you did." Ryan stepped closer. "I didn't plan this." I looked at him. "You've been my best friend since we were kids." "I know. I trusted you with everything." "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "No, you're sorry because I found out." Emma reached toward me. "Ethan, please." I stepped back before she could touch me. "Don't." Tears filled her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen." "Then tell me." She looked at Ryan before answering. "I love him." The room became completely silent. Those 3 words shattered something inside me. Not because she loved someone else, because she said them without hesitation. I realized she had already left me long before tonight. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "I know you hate me. I don't even know who you are anymore." He looked down. "I wanted to tell you." "When?" He couldn't answer. Emma wiped her eyes. I didn't want to keep lying. I smiled. It surprised even me. It wasn't happiness. It was exhaustion. I spent weeks wondering what I had done wrong. "You didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "Then why?" She closed her eyes. "I changed." I nodded slowly. "I guess you did." Nobody spoke. The silence felt heavier than shouting. I bent down and picked up the flowers. A few petals had fallen onto the floor. I placed them gently on the table. "They were for you." Emma started crying harder. "I'm so sorry." I took one slow breath. "You don't have to apologize anymore." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked at both of them. "If this is really what you want." "It is," Emma whispered. I nodded. "Then you have my blessing." They both stared at me. Ryan blinked. "What?" "I hope the 2 of you are happy." "Ethan." I smiled again. This time it felt even more painful. "I won't stand in your way." Emma covered her mouth. "I never wanted to lose you." "You already did." I turned around before my voice broke. Behind me, I heard Emma call my name. "Ethan, please wait." I kept walking. Ryan shouted, "Let me explain." "There isn't anything left to explain," I answered without looking back. Outside, the rain finally began. Within seconds, I was soaked. I didn't care. Each step felt heavier than the last. I finally let the tears fall. Nobody passing by knew why I was crying. To them, I was just another man walking through the rain. But I knew the truth. In a single evening, I had lost the woman I planned to marry and the friend I had trusted like a brother. As I disappeared into the darkness, I made myself one silent promise. I would never beg for people who had already chosen to leave me. The first few days after that night felt like I was breathing without really living. My phone never stopped vibrating. Every notification made my stomach tighten, but I refused to look. I already knew who was calling. Emma. Ryan. Again and again. I placed my phone face down on the table. "I'm done listening," I whispered. A few minutes later, someone knocked on my apartment door. I ignored it. Another knock followed. "Ethan," Grace shouted. "I know you're inside." I stayed silent. She knocked even harder. "If you don't open this door, I'm using my spare key." I sighed. 30 seconds later, she walked inside carrying 2 bags of groceries. She looked around my apartment. "Did you even eat today?" "I'm fine." She folded her arms. "That's a lie. I'm just tired. You look like you haven't slept in days." I forced a weak smile. "I've had better weeks." She walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. "Ethan." "What?" "There's nothing in here except water." I wasn't hungry. She turned toward me. "No, you're heartbroken." I looked away. Grace placed the groceries on the counter. "I know what happened." I closed my eyes. "I don't want to talk about it." "You don't have to." "Good. But you're coming outside." I laughed without humor. "I'm not." "Yes, you are." I said no. She grabbed my jacket from the chair and threw it at me. "You can hate me later. I don't feel like going anywhere." I wasn't asking. I stared at her. She stared back. "Finally," he sighed. "You've always been stubborn." She smiled. "I learned from my big brother." An hour later, we sat on a quiet park bench. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she broke the silence. "Do you still love her?" I answered honestly. "Yes." "Do you want her back?" I thought about it before shaking my head. "I want the woman I believed she was." Grace nodded slowly. "That woman never existed." Her words hurt because they felt true. She gently nudged my shoulder. "You didn't lose your value." "It feels like I did." "No." She looked directly into my eyes. "They lost someone loyal." I lower my head. "I keep wondering what I did wrong." "You trusted the wrong people." The sentence stayed with me all night. A week later, I returned to work. I hoped staying busy would quiet my thoughts. Instead, I made mistakes I normally never made. During a meeting, I mixed up important reports. Afterward, my senior manager, Daniel, stopped me. My office. I expected criticism. Instead, he handed me a cup of coffee. "You look terrible." "I've been better." "Relationship?" I looked surprised. "Was it that obvious?" He smiled slightly. "I've lived long enough to recognize heartbreak." I laughed quietly. "My girlfriend left me." "For someone else?" "My best friend." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "That's rough." I waited for comforting words. They never came. Instead, he asked, "Why are you still carrying their choices?" I frowned. "I don't understand." He folded his hands. "Stop asking why they betrayed you." I stayed silent. He continued, "Ask why you trusted people who never deserved you." His words hit me harder than I expected. "I love them." "I know. I believe they loved me too. They probably loved what you gave them." I looked down at my coffee. Daniel's voice became calmer. "Listen carefully." I nodded. "You cannot control what people choose." "I know, but you can control what you choose next." I took a slow breath. What if I don't know what comes next? Then start with one decision. Which one? Choose yourself. Those 2 words echoed inside my head long after I left his office. That evening, I returned home. I opened a drawer filled with old photographs. Emma smiling at the beach. Ryan with his arm around my shoulder. Birthday parties. Road trips. Family dinners. Memories that no longer belonged to me. I picked up the first picture. "I'm grateful for what was real," I whispered. Then I dropped it into a box. One by one, every photo followed. When the drawer was empty, I opened my phone. Without thinking, I searched for Emma's profile. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I remembered Daniel's voice. "Choose yourself." I closed the app. I blocked her account. Next came Ryan. Block. Silence filled the apartment. For the first time in weeks, it felt peaceful instead of lonely. I looked around the room and took one deep breath. "I can't change what happened," I said aloud. "But I can decide what happens next." The pain was still there. The memories still hurt. The betrayal still felt real. But as I stood there, surrounded by an empty room and a quiet heart, I made myself a promise that nobody could ever take away. From this day forward, my future would never again depend on people who had already chosen to walk away. Months passed faster than I expected. The pain did not disappear overnight, but it stopped controlling every morning I woke up. Instead of checking my phone for messages that would never matter again, I focused on work. Every small step forward reminded me that my life was still moving. One morning, Daniel stopped by my desk. "Coffee?" he asked. I smiled. "You're buying?" He laughed. "I'll even pay for the expensive one." "Then I'm definitely coming." A few minutes later, we sat in a quiet cafe across the street. He looked at me carefully. "You seem different." "I feel different." "In a good way?" "I think so." He nodded. "Good. Because I'm about to make your life harder." I laughed. I should have seen that coming. He placed a folder on the table. "I want you to lead the Harrison Project." I stared at him. "Me?" "Yes. There are people with more experience." "There are. So why me?" "Because they know how to manage work." "And me?" "You know how to lead people." I looked away. "I've never led a project this big." "You've never given yourself the chance." I stayed quiet. Daniel leaned forward. "Tell me the truth." "What? Are you afraid of failing?" I answered honestly. "Yes." He smiled. "Good." I frowned. "Why is that good?" "Because arrogant people stop learning." I laughed softly. "You always have an answer." "I've made enough mistakes to earn them." His confidence in me felt strange. For years, I had doubted myself without realizing it. Maybe heartbreak had forced me to see how much I depended on other people's approval. Maybe Daniel saw that before I did. A week later, I stood inside a conference room waiting for an important client. My hands felt cold. Daniel whispered beside me, "Relax. I'm trying." The client isn't looking for perfection. What is he looking for? Someone honest. The conference room door opened. A tall man walked in with a calm smile. Daniel stood. "Ethan, I'd like you to meet Oliver Hayes." I shook his hand. "It's nice to meet you." Oliver smiled. "I've heard good things about you." "I hope they're true." He laughed. "I like honest people." The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. Instead of pretending to know every answer, I admitted when I needed more information. When it ended, Oliver closed his notebook. "I've made my decision." I waited nervously. "I want Ethan leading this project." I blinked. "Really?" He nodded. "You listen before you speak." I smiled. "Thank you." Daniel looked at me with quiet pride. As we walked back to the office, he nudged my shoulder. "What did I tell you?" I almost talked myself out of it. "And you didn't let me." Exactly. The following weeks became the busiest of my career. Long meetings, late nights, endless planning. For the first time, I wasn't simply doing my job. I was building something that mattered. Every successful presentation gave me confidence I never knew I had. One afternoon, Grace called me. "Mr. Busy finally answered." I laughed. "I've been working. I can tell." "Ow, you actually sound happy." I paused. "I guess I do. I'm proud of you." "Thanks." She hesitated. I heard something. "What?" "It's about Emma and Ryan." I leaned back in my chair. "I don't really want to know." I figured. "So don't tell me." She stayed quiet. Then she asked softly, "Are you sure?" I thought for a moment. "Actually, go ahead." She sighed. "They argue all the time." I said nothing. "People say they're always fighting." I looked out my office window. "They chose each other." "I know. Then that's their life." Grace sounded surprised. "You're not angry?" I smiled. "No, not even a little. I spent too much time carrying anger." She stayed silent. "I don't have room for it anymore." After we ended the call, I returned to work without thinking about Emma again. That realization surprised me. Months earlier, hearing her name would have ruined my entire day. Now it lasted less than a minute. A few days later, Daniel walked into my office. "I've got news." "Good or bad?" "Very good." "I'm listening." "The client loved your leadership." I smiled. "Seriously?" "They're extending the contract." I let out a long breath. "I can't believe it." "You should." He folded his arms. "You earned this." For the first time in a long while, I believed him. That evening, I drove home with the windows down. The cool air filled the car. I thought about everything that had happened. Emma leaving, Ryan betraying me, the sleepless nights, the empty apartment, Grace refusing to let me disappear, Daniel refusing to let me quit on myself. Somehow, every painful moment had pushed me toward becoming someone stronger. I realized something as I parked outside my apartment. I didn't want revenge anymore. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need anyone to fail for me to succeed. All I wanted was a peaceful life built with my own hands. Every achievement felt like another brick replacing the broken pieces they had left behind. For the first time since the night everything fell apart, I looked at my reflection, smiled without forcing it, and quietly believed that the best chapters of my life had not happened yet. Life kept moving, and for the first time in years, I stopped counting the days since my heart had been broken. Work filled my mornings, confidence filled my thoughts, and peace slowly replaced the emptiness I once carried everywhere. One afternoon, Daniel walked into my office. "You've been smiling a lot lately." I laughed. "Is that a complaint?" "Not at all." He leaned against the door. "I have another meeting for you." "With Oliver?" He nodded. "In another company." I grabbed my notebook. "When?" "Right now." As we walked toward the conference room, he smiled. "You've changed." "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." "Ow." "You walk like a man who knows where he's going." His words stayed with me. Inside the meeting, Oliver greeted me warmly. "Ethan, good to see you again." "It's always a pleasure." He introduced several people from another company. We shook hands one by one. Then the conference room door opened again. I looked up. My heart skipped exactly one beat. Emma walked inside holding a folder. She stopped immediately. Our eyes met. For a second, neither of us moved. She looked almost the same, but there was something different. The excitement that used to shine in her eyes had faded. She looked tired. Oliver smiled. "Oh, perfect. Everyone's here." Emma swallowed quietly. I stood and offered a polite smile. "Good afternoon." Her lips parted slightly. Hi, Ethan." I nodded. "It's nice to see you." That was all. No anger. No bitterness. No sadness. Just simple politeness. Daniel glanced at me, but said nothing. The meeting began. Business replaced memories. We discussed deadlines, budgets, and schedules. Whenever Emma spoke, I listened respectfully, just as I did with everyone else. Nothing more, nothing less. Once or twice, I noticed her looking at me. Each time, I returned my attention to the presentation. When a meeting ended, Oliver smiled. "Excellent work, everyone." People slowly gathered their papers. Emma stepped toward me. "Ethan." I turned politely. "Yes." She hesitated. "You look well." "Thank you." "You seem happy." "I've been doing well." Another silence followed. I'm glad." I smiled kindly. "I appreciate that." She looked like she wanted to say more. Instead, I simply nodded. "Have a good afternoon." "You too." I walked away before the conversation became something else. Behind me, I heard nothing. No footsteps. No excuses. No apology. Only silence. Later that evening, Grace called me. "How was your meeting?" "It went well." I heard Emma was there. I smiled. News travels fast. "So, we talked." She gasped dramatically. "And?" I said hello. That's it. That's it." She laughed. I expected something much bigger. So did she. "What do you mean?" I think she expected anger. And I didn't have any left. Grace became quiet. "I'm proud of you." After work, I stopped at a small cafe. While waiting for my coffee, I overheard two businessmen talking nearby. "Did you hear about Ryan Mitchell?" The name caught my attention. "He and Nathan are making risky investments. They're making easy money. For now, they've been cutting corners. That never ends well." I looked down at my coffee. Once, hearing Ryan's name would have filled me with rage. Now it only reminded me of someone I used to know. That night, I sat alone on my apartment balcony. The city lights stretched across the horizon. My phone buzzed. It was Grace again. "Sorry," she said. "One more thing." "What happened?" "I ran into one of Emma's old friends." I stayed quiet. "They said Emma and Ryan fight all the time. I hope they figure things out." Grace sounded surprised. "That's your response?" "What else should I say?" "Nothing, I guess." I smiled. "Their relationship isn't my responsibility." She laughed softly. "You've really changed." I had to. After we hung up, I thought about the woman I had seen that afternoon. Emma used to laugh without forcing it. Today her smile looked heavy. I remembered how she loved talking about her dreams. I used to listen for hours, even when I was tired, even when I disagreed. I always wanted her to feel supported. Now, I wondered if anyone listened to her the same way. Then I stopped myself. Those questions belonged to another version of me. The man I used to be would have spent the whole night wondering whether she was happy. The man I had become simply wished everyone peace and kept moving forward. A few days later, Oliver stopped by my office. I wanted to thank you. For what? The client specifically praised your professionalism. That's good to hear. He smiled. They also said you stayed calm, even during an awkward meeting. I laughed. I've had plenty of practice. He looked confused. I'll tell you the story someday. I'll hold you to that. As he walked away, I glanced at my reflection in the office window. For the first time, I noticed what Emma must have seen. I stood taller. My shoulders no longer carried invisible weight. The sadness had left my eyes. Losing the people I trusted most had once felt like the end of my life. Now I understood it had only been the painful beginning of becoming someone they never expected me to become. A few weeks after the business meeting, our company organized a charity event for a local community center. Daniel insisted everyone attend. You need a break from spreadsheets, he said. I like spreadsheets. He laughed. That's exactly why you need this. I smiled and followed him inside the crowded hall. People talked, laughed, and carried donation boxes from one table to another. Daniel handed me a clipboard. You're helping with registration. I should have known there was a catch. There always is. About an hour later, a woman walked toward my table carrying a stack of books. She smiled. Am I late? I looked at the volunteer badge around her neck. Sophia Bennett? That's me. I checked the list. You're right on time. Good. I hate being late. I handed her a name tag. I'm Ethan. It's nice to meet you, Ethan. Her smile felt calm. Not forced. Not practiced. Just honest. As we organized books together, she glanced at the growing pile. I think we brought too many. I laughed. I don't think that's possible. You like reading? I do. What kind of books? The ones that make me forget the clock exists. She smiled. That's a good answer. What about you? I love stories that leave people stronger than they started. I looked at her for a second. I like those too. The afternoon passed quickly. We talked while arranging tables. So, she asked, what's your dream vacation? I blinked. That's random. I know. I laughed. Maybe Japan. Really? I've always wanted to see the cherry blossoms. She nodded excitedly. I want to visit the mountains in Switzerland. That's a long way from cherry blossoms. I like quiet places. I understand that. She looked at me. You do. I've learned to appreciate peace. She smiled softly. I think peace is underrated. What surprised me most was what she didn't ask. She never asked whether I was dating someone. She never asked why I sometimes became quiet. She never searched for old wounds. She simply enjoyed the conversation we were already having. When the event ended, she waved. It was nice meeting you. You too. Maybe we'll volunteer together again. I'd like that. So would I. She walked away with the same relaxed smile she had arrived with. Daniel appeared beside me. Well, I looked confused. Well, what? What do you think of Sophia? I think she's nice. Only nice. I laughed. We've known each other for 4 hours. Fair enough. A few days later, I received a message. Sophia, the community center, still has extra books. Want to help next Saturday? I smiled before replying. I'd be happy to. The following weekend felt easy. No pressure. No pretending. While stacking books, she asked, do you ever think people make life more complicated than it needs to be? Every day. What would your perfect weekend look like? I thought for a moment. Coffee. A good book. Maybe a long walk. She laughed. That's almost exactly what I was going to say. You have good taste. I was about to say the same thing. For the first time in a long while, talking to someone felt effortless. There were no games. No hidden tests. No need to prove I was enough. As we finished packing the last box, Sophia smiled. Thanks for helping. Thank you for inviting me. I'll probably ask again. I'll probably say yes. Meanwhile, life outside mine continued moving. Grace called one evening. I heard another update. I smiled. You really know everything. I try. What happened? Emma and Ryan are arguing more than ever. I stayed quiet. Ryan barely comes home. He must be busy. Busy chasing money. I leaned back on my couch. That's his choice. Grace hesitated. They say Emma isn't happy. I looked out the window. I hope she finds peace. That's all. That's all. After we ended the call, I thought about something Daniel once told me. You cannot control what people choose. Now I finally understood those words. Another week passed before I saw Sophia again. She handed me a cup of coffee. I remembered your order. I smiled. You remembered? You strike me as someone who notices little things. I do. So do I. We sat on a bench outside the community center. She looked at the sky. I think love should feel peaceful. I glanced at her. What makes you say that? My grandparents used to tell me something. What? If loving someone feels like proving your worth every day, you're loving the wrong person. I stayed silent. Those words settled deep inside me. She looked at me curiously. Too serious? No. I smiled. I think that's one of the smartest things I've ever heard. She laughed softly. I'm glad. As I drove home that evening, I realized something had quietly changed. For months, I had measured my healing by how little I thought about Emma. Now I measured it by how naturally I smiled around someone new. I didn't know where my friendship with Sophia would lead. I wasn't trying to force an answer. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing love. I was simply enjoying the peace that came from being accepted without needing to earn it, and that feeling alone was enough to remind me how much my life had already changed. Life had become steady in a way I once believed was impossible. Work continued to grow. My friendship with Sophia felt natural, and every new day carried less weight than the one before. Then one morning, Grace called before I had even finished my coffee. Have you seen the news? She asked. No. What happened? It's Ryan. I stayed quiet. His company is everywhere online. What about it? His business partner disappeared. Nathan? Yes. I slowly sat down. What happened? They're saying Nathan stole company money. I rubbed my forehead. And Ryan? People think he knew. I let out a slow breath. That's bad. There are lawsuits. I closed my eyes. Wow. Everyone's talking about it. After we hung up, I searched the headlines. Nathan had vanished without a trace. Millions of dollars were missing. Ryan's company was under investigation. Clients were canceling contracts. Investors wanted answers. I stared at the screen for several seconds before closing my laptop. I felt no satisfaction, only sadness. Daniel noticed my expression later that day. Bad news. Someone from my past. He nodded. The businessman? Ryan. I heard. He waited. So, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. He smiled gently. You don't have to feel anything. I thought I'd enjoy seeing karma. And do you? I shook my head. No. Then you've already won. That evening, I returned home exhausted. Just as I unlocked my apartment door, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Ethan. My hand froze. Slowly, I turned around. Emma stood in the hallway. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had walked away from me. Her eyes were red. Her shoulders slumped. She held her hands together as if trying to stop them from shaking. What are you doing here? I asked quietly. I needed to see you. I hesitated before opening the door. You can come in. She stepped inside without speaking. For several moments, neither of us said anything. Finally, she whispered, You look happy. I've been doing well. I'm glad. I nodded. Can I get you some water? Please. I handed her a glass. She held it, but never drank. Instead, tears slowly filled her eyes. I'm sorry. I remained silent. I know those words can't fix anything. They can't. She nodded. I deserve that. Another long silence followed. Then she finally spoke again. I confused excitement with happiness. I looked at her calmly. I know. I thought choosing Ryan meant choosing a better future. She laughed bitterly through her tears. I was so wrong. I said nothing. He changed. I looked in her eyes. Or maybe you finally saw who he always was. She lowered her head. I think you're right. Her voice broke. I keep remembering how patient you were. She wiped her face. You listened to every dream I ever had. I stayed quiet. You forgave every mistake. She looked at me. You always believed in me. I took a slow breath. I did. She nodded slowly. And I threw it all away. Neither of us spoke. The silence said enough. Finally, she whispered the question she had come to ask. Can people ever begin again? I looked at her for a long moment. Memories passed through my mind. The anniversary dinner. Ryan holding her hand. The flowers falling to the floor. The sleepless nights. The empty apartment. Then other memories appeared. Grace refusing to leave me alone. Daniel believing in me. Sophia laughing beside stacks of books. The life I'd slowly built. I smiled gently. Yes. Hope appeared in her eyes. I continued. People can begin again. She reached toward me. Ethan. But not always together. Her hand slowly fell. I forgave you a long time ago. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. You did? Yes. She whispered. Then, is there still a chance? I shook my head. No. She closed her eyes. I understand. I spoke softly. Forgiveness isn't the same as returning. She covered her mouth as she cried. I wish I had understood that sooner. So do I. She stood slowly. I thought, maybe... I know. I'm too late. I nodded once. Yes. She looked around the apartment. Everything inside reflected the life I had rebuilt. The shelves filled with books. The peaceful silence. The photographs with Grace and friends from work. None of them included the past. She smiled through tears. You really moved on. I finally learned how. She walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around one last time. I truly hope you're happy. I hope you find peace too. She nodded. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Emma. The door closed quietly behind her. I stood there for several seconds. I expected sadness. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. Not because she had suffered. Not because I had been right. But because I finally understood the truth. The man waiting for her return no longer existed. He had slowly disappeared through every lesson, every challenge, and every choice that followed the worst night of his life. I looked around my apartment, smiled to myself, and realized my heart no longer belonged to memories that could never return. At last, it belonged completely to the future waiting patiently in front of me. A few weeks passed after Emma visited my apartment. Life settled back into its peaceful rhythm. Work remained busy, my weekends were quiet, and every conversation with Sophia reminded me that healing was not a destination. It was something I practiced every day. One afternoon, Grace walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. I brought your favorite. I smiled. You deserve a raise. I'll accept cash. I laughed as we sat down. She looked at me carefully. I heard more news. I already knew who she meant. Ryan. She nodded. It's over. What is? Everything. I waited. His company officially closed. I stayed silent. His reputation is gone. She took a slow breath. Most of his friends disappeared too. I looked down at my coffee. And Emma, they aren't together anymore. I nodded once. I figured. Grace leaned forward. That's all you have to say? What else is there? She smiled. I don't know. I hope they both learned something. She stared at me for a second. You really mean that? I do. Later that afternoon, Daniel stopped by my office. Walk with me. We headed outside together. After a few minutes, he asked, still hearing updates about your past? Sometimes. And I don't feel much anymore. He smiled. Good. I thought seeing Ryan lose everything would make me happy. But it doesn't. Daniel nodded. Because you're finally healing. I looked at him. I used to think karma meant watching people suffer. And now, I think karma teaches everyone eventually. He smiled again. You're learning. A few days later, I attended another community fundraiser. As I arranged donation boxes, a familiar woman approached me. Ethan, I turned. Mrs. Brooks. Margaret offered a nervous smile. It's been a long time. It has. She looked uncomfortable. Do you have a minute? Of course. We stepped away from the crowd. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. She looked down. I judged you unfairly. I stayed quiet. I encouraged Emma to chase appearances. Her voice became softer. I thought money and excitement mattered more than character. She shook her head. I was wrong. I answered honestly. We all make mistakes. She looked into my eyes. You love my daughter. I did, and I never appreciated that. I smiled politely. I hope she's doing okay. Margaret's eyes filled with regret. She isn't. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Finally, she whispered, she knows what she lost. I nodded gently. I hope she finds peace. Margaret blinked. You're kinder than I deserve. I've spent too much time carrying anger. She thanked me quietly before leaving. As I returned inside, someone called my name. Ethan. I turned again. A young woman smiled shyly. I'm Lily. It took me a second to remember. Emma's cousin. She nodded. We met years ago. I remember. She hesitated. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. She looked around before speaking softly. I wanted you to know something. What is it? Emma still has your photographs. I said nothing. She keeps them in a box. Lily lowered her voice. She can't throw them away. I looked toward the windows. She reads your old birthday cards sometimes. A long silence followed. Finally, Lily asked, Does that make you happy? I thought carefully. No. She looked surprised. It doesn't. I shook my head. It makes me sad. Why? Because regret is a heavy thing to carry. Lily slowly nodded. I understand. I truly hope she forgives herself someday. She smiled sadly. I'll tell her that. You don't have to. I think she'd like to know. Before leaving, Lily looked back. I'm glad your life turned out well. So am I. That evening, Daniel and I sat outside after work. The sunset painted the sky orange. He sipped his coffee. You've been thinking. I have. About Emma? About everyone. He waited. I thought winning meant proving they were wrong. And now, I don't need to prove anything. Daniel smiled. Exactly. He looked toward the horizon. Do you know what true victory is? I shook my head. He answered quietly. It's when someone else's pain no longer controls your happiness. His words settled deep inside me. I repeated them softly. Someone else's pain no longer controls my happiness. He nodded. That's freedom. We sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. On the drive home, I thought about everything that had happened. Ryan had lost his business. Emma had lost the future she once imagined. Margaret carried regret. Even Lily looked saddened by everything her family had gone through. Once, I would have called that justice. Now it simply looked like pain spreading from one bad decision to another. I unlocked my apartment and stepped inside. The room felt peaceful. No anger waited for me. No bitterness followed me home. Only quiet. Only hope. I smiled as I placed my keys on the table. For the first time since the night my life fell apart, I understood that karma had never needed my help. Life had already taught everyone the lessons they refused to learn, while giving me the greatest gift of all. It had finally set my heart completely free. Life no longer felt like something I had to survive. Every morning, I woke up with purpose instead of pain. Work continued to grow. My friendship with Daniel remained strong, and spending time with Sophia became the part of every week I quietly looked forward to the most. One Saturday morning, Sophia called me. Are you free today? I am now. She laughed. I haven't even told you my plan. I trust your plans. You might regret saying that. I doubt it. Meet me at the botanical garden in an hour. I'll be there. When I arrived, she was already waiting near the entrance with 2 cups of coffee. You remembered. She smiled. You always order the same thing. I guess I'm predictable. I prefer dependable. We started walking along the quiet paths. Flowers surrounded us, and families laughed nearby. Everything felt peaceful. Sophia looked at me. Can I ask you something? You never have to ask permission. She smiled. What scares you now? I thought for a moment. Honestly, always. I'm afraid of becoming someone who stops trusting. She nodded thoughtfully. That's a real fear. I don't want my past to decide my future. It doesn't have to. I looked at her. How are you so sure? She stopped walking. Because you're here. What do you mean? You chose to trust me enough to answer honestly. I smiled. I guess I did. She laughed softly. You've already won half the battle. We found an empty bench beneath a large tree. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence felt comfortable instead of awkward. Finally, I broke it. I never told you everything. You don't have to. I want to. She turned toward me. I'm listening. I told her about the anniversary dinner, about the flowers falling from my hands, about the nights I couldn't sleep, about Grace refusing to let me disappear, about Daniel teaching me to choose myself. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached over and gently held my hand. I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you. She smiled warmly. But I'm not sorry we met afterward. I laughed quietly. I'm not either. She looked into my eyes. I'm not here to compete with your past. I know. I'm here to build a future with a man sitting beside me. Those words settled deep inside my heart. I squeeze her hand. I've never had to prove myself around you. You never should. She shrugged. Love isn't a competition. No, it's a choice people make every day. I smiled. I'm glad you chose me. I'm glad you let me. A few days later, Oliver invited us to a client appreciation luncheon. Sophia came with me. As we entered the hotel ballroom, she adjusted my tie. There. What? You look nervous. I am. She laughed. You always do this before meetings. And I always survive. Exactly. We walked inside together. While talking with Oliver, I noticed someone standing across the room. Emma. She had frozen the moment she saw us. Her eyes moved from my face to the way Sophia naturally held my hand. Sophia quietly whispered, Is everything okay? I nodded. Yes. Emma slowly approached us. Hello, Ethan. I smiled politely. Hello, Emma. She looked at Sophia. You must be Sophia. Sophia offered a kind smile. It's nice to meet you. You too. Emma looked back at me. You seem different. I've changed. I can see that. Her voice sounded calm but heavy. I'm happy for you. Thank you. She looked down for a second before asking, Are you happy? I answered without hesitation. Yes. She nodded slowly. I always hoped you would be. None of us spoke for several seconds. Then Emma smiled sadly. I understand now. I looked at her. Understand what? The man I came hoping to find doesn't exist anymore. I remained silent. She continued. The man who waited for me. Her voice trembled. Is gone. I nodded gently. He had to be. She looked at Sophia and smiled. Take good care of him. Sophia answered softly. I will. Emma took one final look at me. I'm sorry. I know. Then she quietly turned and walked away. I watched her disappear into the crowd. There was no desire to stop her. No unfinished conversation. No unanswered question. Sophia slipped her hand into mine. How do you feel? I smiled. Peaceful. She squeezed my hand. I'm glad. As we left the hotel together, I realized Emma had finally seen the truth. Heartbreak had changed me forever. The man she remembered had loved without protecting himself. The man walking beside Sophia had learned that real love never demanded constant sacrifice or endless forgiveness. It grew through honesty, patience, respect, and trust. As the afternoon sunlight warmed the sidewalk beneath our feet, I looked ahead instead of behind. I felt no anger toward Emma, no hatred toward Ryan, only gratitude. If my heart had never been broken, I might never have discovered my own strength, and I certainly would never have found the peaceful life I now proudly called my own. Months passed peacefully after I began building a new life. Then one afternoon, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. Hello, Ethan. I recognized her voice immediately. Emma. Thank you for answering. I stayed quiet. Can we meet one last time? I thought for a moment. What? I need to say something. You can say it now. I'd rather say it in person. I looked out my office window. 1 hour. Thank you. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe we had never visited before. When I arrived, she was already sitting by the window. She looked nervous. I walked over. Hello. She stood. Thank you for coming. I sat across from her. How have you been? She smiled sadly. I've had better days. The waiter brought 2 coffees. Neither of us touched them. Emma took a slow breath. Ryan is gone. I nodded. I heard. He disappeared after everything fell apart. I'm sorry. She looked surprised. You mean that? Yes. She lowered her eyes. I don't hate him anymore. Neither do I. A long silence settled between us. Finally, she whispered, I owe you the truth. I'm listening. She looked directly at me. I betrayed your love. I remained silent. I betrayed your trust. She wiped away a tear. And I betrayed the future we planned together. I nodded slowly. Yes. She looked down at her hands. I've replayed that night in my mind thousands of times. I said nothing. I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd stood up and walked back to you. You didn't. I know. Her voice trembled. I thought you would fight for me. I looked at her calmly. What do you mean? I expected you to chase me. She laughed bitterly. I thought you'd keep calling. She shook her head. I thought you'd wait forever. I smiled gently. But I didn't. No. She looked into my eyes. You let me go. I had to. I never imagined you actually would. I leaned back in my chair. There comes a moment when holding on hurts more than letting go. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. Another silence followed. She whispered, do you still think about me? I answered honestly. Sometimes. Hope briefly appeared on her face. Then I continued, but only as someone who helped shape my life. Her smile faded. I understand. I don't remember you with anger anymore. What do you remember? I smiled softly. I remember the lessons. She lowered her head. I wish I had learned them sooner. So do I. She looked at me again. Did you ever stop loving me? I thought carefully before answering. I never stopped caring about the person you used to be. And the woman I became? I had to let her go. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I deserve that. This isn't about what you deserve. She frowned. Then what is it about? It's about accepting reality. I took a slow breath. Loving someone also means knowing when to stop holding on. She quietly repeated my words. When to stop holding on. I nodded. Some goodbyes are necessary. She closed her eyes. I spent years hoping you'd give me another chance. I know. I finally understand why you couldn't. I smiled kindly. I truly hope you're happy. She looked at me with disbelief. After everything? Yes. Why? Because carrying hate would only hurt me. She wiped away another tear. You really forgave me. I did. She whispered, thank you. I stood from my chair. I should go. She looked up quickly. This is really goodbye, isn't it? I smiled gently. Yes. She nodded through her tears. I won't ask you to stay. I appreciate that. As I picked up my jacket, she spoke one final time. Ethan, I turned toward her. I'm sorry for everything. I know. I hope Sophia knows how lucky she is. I smiled. So do I. She laughed quietly through her tears. You finally found the life you deserved. I think I did. I reached into my pocket and placed enough money on the table to cover both coffees. Then I looked at her one last time. I sincerely wish you peace, Emma. She pressed a trembling hand against her heart. And I wish you a lifetime of happiness. I nodded. Thank you. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the cafe door. I never looked back. As I stepped outside, the afternoon sun warmed my face. Behind me, I knew Emma was crying. Not because she still hoped I would return, but because she finally understood that this goodbye was different from every goodbye before it. There would never be another phone call, another meeting, another chance. I walked forward with a peaceful heart, knowing that the hardest chapter of my life had finally reached its true ending. Years passed more quickly than I ever imagined. Looking back, it almost felt impossible that one painful evening had changed the entire direction of my life. What once felt like the end had quietly become the beginning of everything I was meant to find. One morning, I stood in the kitchen making coffee. Sophia wrapped her arms around me. You're thinking again. I smiled. Is it that obvious? It always is. What gave me away? You stare out the window whenever you're remembering something. I laughed softly. I've been caught. She rested her head against my shoulder. Good memories? Mostly. She looked at me. You finally say mostly instead of all bad. I noticed that too. She smiled. I like this version of you. I do too. Our home felt peaceful. Laughter-filled rooms that had once existed only in my imagination. My career had grown beyond anything I had expected. The Harrison Project had opened doors to even bigger opportunities, and Daniel often joked that I no longer needed his advice. I created a monster, he laughed one afternoon. I grinned. You created a confident employee. I'll take the credit. You've earned it. He smiled proudly. I always knew you'd make it. You knew before I did. That's what mentors are for. As I drove home that evening, I realized he was right. Confidence had replaced fear. Peace had replaced anger. Gratitude had replaced regret. When I arrived home, Sophia opened the front door before I reached it. We have a visitor. Who is it? Lily. I stepped inside. Lily stood in the living room holding a small envelope. It's good to see you, she said. You too. She looked nervous. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. She held out the envelope. Emma asked me to give you this. I looked at the handwriting. Even after all those years, I recognized it immediately. I wasn't sure if you'd want it, Lily admitted. I smiled gently. It's okay. She nodded. She said this would be the last time. I understand. After thanking her, Sophia walked Lily to the door. Before leaving, Lily smiled sadly. I hope you're happy. I truly am. I'm glad. When the door closed, Sophia returned. You don't have to read it today. I know. She squeezed my hand. I'll be right here. I sat quietly at the dining table. For several minutes, I simply looked at the envelope. Finally, I opened it. Emma's handwriting was careful but unsteady. She thanked me for loving her when she never truly appreciated what she had been given. She admitted that watching me build a peaceful life had forced her to understand the real cost of betrayal. She wrote that she had spent years wishing she could become the woman I once believed she was. She apologized one final time. Then she ended the letter with a simple sentence. I hope the happiness you found stays with you forever. I slowly folded the letter. No tears came. No anger appeared. Only quiet gratitude. Sophia sat beside me. How are you feeling? I smiled. At peace. She rested her hand over mine. I'm glad. I stood and walked toward the hallway closet. On the highest shelf rested an old wooden memory box. I carefully opened it. Inside were a few photographs from my younger years, old concert tickets, childhood keepsakes, and a broken anniversary card I had never thrown away. For a moment, I looked at everything inside. Then I placed Emma's letter beside those memories. Not because I wanted to relive them, but because they had become part of the road that led me here. I slowly closed the lid. The quiet sound echoed through the room. It did not feel like an ending filled with sadness. It felt like the final page of a chapter that no longer needed to be reopened. Sophia walked over. Ready? I looked at her smiling face. More than ever. She reached for my hand. I held it without hesitation. Together we stepped outside into the warm afternoon sunlight. As we walked through our neighborhood, children laughed in nearby yards. Birds sang from the trees, and a gentle breeze carried the familiar feeling of home. I thought about the young man who had once stood alone in the rain, believing his life was over. If I could speak to him now, I would tell him to keep walking. I would tell him that heartbreak could become strength, that betrayal could become wisdom, that forgiveness could become freedom. Most importantly, I would tell him that one day he would stop asking why everything happened and start feeling thankful that it did. I squeezed Sophia's hand a little tighter. She smiled at me. I smiled back. Without looking behind us even once, we continued walking toward the future together. At that moment, I finally understood the greatest truth my journey had taught me. The greatest revenge was never making the people who hurt me suffer. It was building a life so full of love, peace, purpose, and happiness that I no longer needed revenge at all.